All right, welcome to The Explainer. We're here to break down the big stories behind the headlines using the sources themselves. And today we are diving headfirst into a sudden and, frankly, shocking crisis that has pushed one of the world's most vital strategic partnerships right to the edge. It all kind of boils down to this one number, 50%. A figure that just seemed to appear out of nowhere. And now it's threatening to completely unravel 25 years of careful diplomacy between the United States and India. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of it. President Trump didn't just announce a jaw-dropping 50% tariff on everything coming from India. He went on to publicly dismiss a nation that Washington has spent decades trying to build up as a key ally. You can bet that sent diplomats on both sides scrambling. They were completely blindsided. So you have to ask, how on earth did we get here? And so fast. To really feel the whiplash, we need to rewind the clock just a few months. Because the difference between then and now is, well, it's truly stunning. The speed of this collapse is just wild. I mean, think about it. Just this spring, things were looking great. The Indian Prime Minister got an early visit to the White House, and there was all this ambitious talk about doubling trade to $500 billion. Now, fast forward to today, and you've got protest art on the streets of Mumbai, a full-blown trade war, and anti-American feelings are on the rise. In fact, the Brookings Institution is calling this the toughest spot the relationship has been in since the nuclear tests way back in 1998. Now, this whole breakdown didn't just happen because of one bad day or one bad decision. No, analysts are pointing to what they're calling a perfect storm. 4 issues that have been simmering under the surface for a long time, and they all just happen to erupt at the very same moment. What's really striking here is how all these issues are tangled together. You've got these nagging disagreements over trade. Then you have a sudden U.S. pivot back toward India's main rival, Pakistan. You've got the ongoing friction over India's ties to Russia. And then, layered on top of all of that, you have what looks like a dose of personal frustration coming straight from the White House. So let's take a closer look at how this perfect storm actually played out. Things escalated with unbelievable speed. It really started in May, when President Trump claimed he'd brokered a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, a claim that New Delhi immediately and publicly denied. Then came July, and the U.S. announced an oil deal with Pakistan, which was a huge shock to India. And then, in August, you get the 1-2 punch, 2 separate tariff hikes that brought the total to that massive 50%. And this right here, this table shows the fundamental disconnect that's causing all this. On every single issue, Washington and New Delhi are playing from completely different rulebooks. The U.S. sees stubborn protectionism from India. India feels like it's being totally singled out. The U.S. sees Pakistan as a partner of convenience. India sees the U.S. empowering a major security threat. The U.S. gets annoyed about India buying Russian oil. India says, hey, we have a right to our own foreign policy. So the key takeaway here is that this isn't just about tariffs. It's a direct challenge to India's entire view of the world. And the impact of all this goes so much deeper than trade. This crisis is putting India's core foreign policy, the very foundation of how it engages with the entire planet, under an incredibly intense geopolitical stress test. And that strategy is called multi-alignment. So what is it? Well, as Foreign Affairs explains it, it's basically the idea that India can and should be friends with everyone, the US, Russia, Iran, you name it, without getting locked into a formal alliance with anyone. The big goal is to maintain what they call strategic autonomy. It lets New Delhi pick and choose its partners depending on the situation. And for years, that policy seemed to work. But this whole crisis has sparked a really tough question in New Delhi. Has multi-alignment actually failed? Did this entire strategy of not taking sides just end up leaving India all alone when it needed backup the most? The results of that stress test were, well, pretty sobering. During that crisis with Pakistan in May, India's friends basically just called for calm. Russia's support was lukewarm at best, and the West seemed more worried about nuclear war than about backing India. But the biggest shock was the central assumption that the U.S. would always need India to counter China. That idea was just shattered. As one analyst put it so bluntly, India's policy of not taking sides meant that when it had its own crisis, nobody took its side either. So what now? You'd think, logically, India might decide to ditch this strategy. But here's the twist. According to sources from Chatham House to Foreign Affairs, the exact opposite is likely to happen.
The thinking in New Delhi seems to be that if Washington is this unreliable, then the answer isn't to get closer to the U.S., it's to work even harder to build other partnerships. So, in a strange way, the failure of multi-alignment is probably going to lead to even more multi-alignment.
So this leaves the U.S. India relationship at a huge crossroads, and analysts are really seeing two starkly different paths forward from here. The first path, which the Brookings Institution lays out, is a real downward spiral. It's a tit-for-tat cycle. The U.S. imposes more tariffs, India hits back with its own. The U.S. gets closer to Pakistan, so India responds by canceling huge American business and defense deals. It could end with crucial groups like the Quad security dialogue just falling apart. This path could undo decades of work. But there is another way. Path 2 is de-escalation. This is where both sides have to find an off-ramp. Maybe President Trump feels like he's gotten a political win he can sell back home and change his focus. Or maybe India offers some small face-saving concession on trade that lets both countries declare victory and just quietly get back to business in a more stable, even if it's less trusting, relationship. But finding that off-ramp, that's going to take a huge dose of realism from both sides. And this quote from the Brookings Institution just nails it. They say any solution has to start by accepting what's just not possible. You can't expect India to give up its independence, and you can't expect President Trump to change his style. Trying to do either is, as they put it, a fruitless endeavor. And that leaves all of us with the final massive question. Is what we're watching just a temporary, even if it's a really bad, fight between two partners who know they need each other? Or are we actually seeing the start of a permanent crack, a sign of a much bigger, more unpredictable shift in how the world works? The answer to that question is going to shape a whole lot more than just this one partnership for years to come.